Welcome to Close Listening. I'm Zach Morgenstern, joined as always by silent co-host Ludwig von B, and today I'm talking the 2022 album Refugees by Jimmy Cliff. It's funny, back in early 2022, I posted a video of what was a review of then Jimmy Cliff's most recent album, 2012's Rebirth. And it had been a while, so I guess not too surprisingly, he finally did come out with some new material. And I had fun listening to this one, so I thought I'd post a quick review of it, but I also have some mixed thoughts. So this album is a tour through a range of catchy and beautiful reggae-associated sounds. It opens, for instance, with this percussion-heavy song called Money Love, about the two conflicting forces that make the world go round. Track 2 goes for something different. We have a sort of smoky, noirish feel with romantic joy in it, and its chorus of Here I Am gives it a bit of biblical potency. Track 4, Security, brings in some sax riffs that kind of channels a Bob Marley energy to it, kind of like Three Little Birds. It's sort of a political song, but also just mostly a sort of comforting animal folk wisdom song going, birds got their nest, foxes got their hole. Track number 5 brings in yet another classic feel-good reggae song. It's a kind of Bob Marley One Love kind of feel, and it's called One Song. But it's musically interesting because it opens with this almost Jackson Browne sounding sort of brooding singer-songwritery sort of piano and voice bit before building up to that liberating, simple, fun little song. Track number 6, My Love Song, toes the line between being digitally distorted and still sounding like a real voice. I don't like overly electric music, but when it toes that line where it's a bit of both worlds, think sort of 80s music, then it can be a lot of fun. Track number 7, Moving On, for me was the real highlight of the album. I wish I could say more about the exact genre of music, because when I looked it up, all people would say is African music, which of course refers to a broad number of traditions. The sound, it sort of reminds me of some of the instrumental arrangements in songs from The Lion King, like The Circle of Life and Can You Feel the Love Tonight, that particular combination of flutes and drums. And I don't know if it's something innate to the music or it's just people my age have powerful associations with The Lion King, but it makes the music very powerful and really adds on to Jimmy Cliff's soaring vocals.
To state a point so obvious I forgot to say it when originally recording this video, Jimmy Cliff's singing ability is the real highlight of this album because he has a very impressive voice. It can be rich and lower, it can go up to the high levels, but unlike a lot of singers who are able to hit high notes, his voice also sounds like a normal, natural person talking. There's simultaneously the humanity and virtuosity in his performance.
Track number 10, Bridges, is a powerful pseudo-spiritual, kind of in the vein of Bridge Over Troubled Water. Track number 11 is a sort of lightweight love song with a sort of bickering couple. You can't tell, is it a comment on social norms about marriage, or is it just, Jimmy Cliff rambling some thoughts together? And then we get the quasi-closer of the record, Happy Day, which with its heavy rhythm part and the sort of on and off vocals reminds you of a kind of movie scene of a sort of character, walking through his town, sort of giving you an overview of his life and in an upbeat, optimistic manner. Now, as you might have noticed, I skipped over a bunch of tracks when talking about this record. And what frustrates me is all those tracks I just told you about, they're a lot of fun to listen to. If there was any justice in the world, if, singers were remembered for what they do later in their careers, a song like Moving On would be a classic. But I guess what's frustrating here is you have this album with this really cool art. It's called Refugees, and on top of having this really catchy reggae music, it also aspires to be a protest album. But unfortunately, the protest songs are kind of the weaker moments on this album, and I don't like to be negative, but I feel like there's a comment to be made about songwriting in general here, so I'm not beating up on a legend in Jimmy Cliff. I think this is just a conversation we can have as songwriters. So you have a number of protest songs on here. There's We Want Justice, there's Racism, and there's the title track, Refugees, which actually gets used twice. There's a dance remix at the end of the record. And, Racism tries, it's kind of fun with its line, racism, racism, no one wins the race. And There's a kind of nice little spiritual image in there, saying, leave racism behind because at the end of our lives we leave our physical body behind. But the real problem with it is, A, it's not making any sort of brand new original commentary. It's pretty play it safe kind of stuff. And also, Cliff isn't thinking for some reason about which lyrics actually work as song lyrics. When you're writing a song, you can't just say anything you want. It has to flow, it has to have melody. Racism, like, doesn't really work as a song lyric. We Want Justice works a little better as a song. It's just frustrating to hear a protest song that just avoids getting into specifics. It's like, we don't like the political system, we don't like the education system, we don't like the economic system. And I'm like, great, tell us more, tell us, get into the details of anti-capitalism, tell a story about government corruption. Just don't say I'm against all the bad things in the world, because that doesn't add up to meaning anything. And I think with the title song, Refugees, is where it gets most frustrating. This one has some specificity to it. In the first verse, Jimmy Cliff talks about how refugees are an important part of various religious traditions, specifically Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, with Moses, Jesus, and Muhammad all seeking refuge in various countries at points, and sort of now saying Europeans were once refugees, but now they're rejecting refugees on their own continent. And I think, first, politically, this argument doesn't quite work because he's sort of saying, embrace refugees. But I think all people embrace refugees in the abstract. The tricky thing is selling people on their bigotry against specific subgroups of refugees. So you're not going to make Europeans unlearn their bigotry against modern day refugees just by saying, well, Jesus was a refugee. Like, as we saw, the reaction to the war in Ukraine was very different to the war in Afghanistan or what's going on right now in Gaza. You'll see very different kinds of immigration programs where, for example, in Canada, it's much easier to get in as a Ukrainian refugee or quasi-refugee than someone coming from Gaza or from Afghanistan or from Sudan or any other country in that situation. So I feel like if you're going to write a politically meaningful protest song, you have to push a bit further. If you want to be radical, you have to take the risks of being radical and not just sing vague, universally appealing, safe platitudes. But the other thing that goes on here is it feels like he just got an idea in his head, and even though he's a great songwriter, as I said, with these non-political songs, it's like when he switches to politics, the songwriting instinct turns off, and he forgets you have to pick song lyrics that have melody to them. So, for example, the second verse goes, there was an exodus from Europe to America. Now there's an exodus from the Middle East to Europe. There's an exodus from Africa to Europe. Like, why are you rhyming Europe and Europe just because you want this repetitive song structure? It should be more like, there was an exodus from Europe to America. But now Europe's blocking people coming from Africa. Why can't they see the commonality across the age? All these myths are keeping people from their homes. Like, it should be something more like that, but I guess he got fixated on his message, and no one says, hey, well, we have to transform these words to make them a bit more melodic. And again, this is not me dragging on Jimmy Cliff. I've noticed this with political songs. It was something I had to learn. Oftentimes people will think you just play some guitar chords while making your political speech and you have a protest song. Whereas the best protest songs are the ones that actually figure out how to turn the protest message into something that also works as a song. So anyway, a lot of fun music on here, and it would be a great thing to add to your collection with this beautiful cover art. Just again, I wish for an album that has political ambitions, I wish the political songs were a little stronger. But, songs like Money Love, One Song, Moving On, Bridges, some pretty good stuff on here. I'm Zach Morgenstern. This is Ludwig von B. See you next time.